give you some advice. Leave town while you can.
I saw her the other day. She was acting bloody peculiar.
There's only one thing that can explain it. She made a pact with the devil.
Hello there, how are you?
I'm good, thanks. How are you keeping considering the circumstances?
Well, you know, hanging in there.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I've related to that. The first thing I wanted to say was, I'm not sure if you two should be tried under the Witchcraft Act for having a film that's so prophetic now.
Well, yeah, I mean, it was a very. I think at some point I joked that it was the biggest publicity stunt in history for the movie, but that was in poor taste. So.
So yeah, I mean, I'm interested a little about the whole genesis of the idea, because I know that it was originally written by a writer that you had worked with beforehand, but then I think that Charlotte kind of came up with a brilliant idea to kind of ground it more and keep the hocus pocus parts of witchcraft out of it. Now, is that how it came about?
That's pretty close. I mean, that's pretty accurate. Yeah. So my friend Ed, whose movie Dark Signal I exec produced a couple of years back, and I've known Ed for 20 odd years now. He came to us with this notion of a kind of witch hunt movie set around that period, 1665 or whatever it was, and yeah, it was more of a sort of Carrie-esque type thing where, you know, you're not sure if she's a witch, and then she suddenly turns around and goes, you know, I am the witch, and zaps everybody. And I found it was somewhat unsatisfying in that way. And the more we did research into it, the more grounded it became, and the more the idea really struck me was that these women actually went through this shit. Was, you know, real. This thing, it happened for real. You know, it was over. You know, there's numbers from 500,000 to 1 million, mostly women, not all women, but mostly women that were, you know, tried, tortured, and executed for a crime which, to all intents and purposes, doesn't exist. You know, that witches aren't flying around in broomsticks and doing all that kind of stuff. So it's really, in the most part, it's just men making up this shit just in order to get rid of people they don't like, or you know, keep women in their place. So
what's changed?
Yeah,
that was my next question. I was going to say, because I mean, you said it's like it's set in the 1600s, no? But I mean, it really kind of shines a light on the misogyny of society, but not just then, but now as well. Now, was that something that you really wanted to shine a light on when you came up with the idea for the story?
Totally.
Yeah, it's part of it, a big part of it, wasn't it?
Yeah, and it was, you know, it's because of the notion that witch hunts are still around. They've taken a different form. You know, cancel culture and such like is, you know, other new forms of witch hunts, and you know, we still have mob rule, things like that. I was noticing that you know, when the mob stormed the Capitol building, it felt like all they were missing was the pitchforks.
Yeah,
you know?
Exactly.
Nowhere to run, witch!
It all seemed incredibly relevant, and at the point of when we were writing it, the thing that was like not relevant at the time was the plague. It was the 65, the year of the Great Plague, and when we said it then because of some fascinating facts that, you know, the witch hunts kind of went up proportionally during the plague,
because people were scared.
Because people were scared, and they were blaming it on the witches. And part of that process was that they were killing cats. They killed cats by the thousands because they were believed to be the witches' familiars that they were using to speak to the devil. So they were capturing and killing thousands and thousands of cats, believing that the witches were spreading the plague. But in killing the cats, that allowed the rats to spread, which spread the plague. So I just loved that, like, cruel historical irony.
And that was more of a backdrop at the time, and it still is in the film, but it's more of a forefront because when people are watching the film, they're
now they see the plague. It's treating it like it's a plague movie, but it's not. It was just a backdrop for the story.
Yeah, no, I mean, I cover mostly horror movies, but I mean, every film that I watched, that's been watching the last kind of 6-7 months, you just can't help correlating, and I'm relating it to the plague, whatever. Just even just like a sentence that someone says or something, you can't help it. So it's just complete coincidence. Obviously, you were both heavily involved in the writing. Charlotte, I think this is the first time that you took to writing. Was it always your intention to star in the film? I mean, when you were writing, did you think about you playing that role?
Well, the thing is, the idea kind of fell on our laps. So it wasn't like we come up with an idea. I wanted to do this, and this was our plan. It fell in our laps, and Neil said, look, you know, the concept is about a young girl who's being accused of being a witch, and we both thought it's a great idea, but you weren't exactly yet inspired 100%, and neither was I. So it kind of happened bit by bit. So then what happened was, it wasn't like I said one day, well, I want to star in it all, and can I co-write it with you? It was more like bit by bit, I was giving Neil some ideas and my thoughts. And then as it went on bit by bit, you know, the only thing we didn't really change was this female character. We knew she'd had to be female because it was being accused of being a witch. And yeah, I guess it was earlier on in the process. We were like, oh, well, I guess I could play this.
Well, obviously, like, Charlotte comes from an acting background.
Mm-hmm.
So in my mind, it was always that I was creating something for Charlotte to play. I think even Ed thought that as well, as like, you know, bringing it to us of like, well, you know, Charlotte could play this.
Yeah.
And it kind of grew into it as we were writing it.
It did, yeah. Because when it landed on our laps, I wasn't like, oh, because I haven't, you know, written anything before. Yeah. So, and I don't know if I, you know, would have if it didn't. It just slowly evolved into something, didn't it? And now since then, we've written co-wrote two other scripts together. It's but it's a great collaboration because I have the actor side point of view, the characters, the story. Neil has something else as a director's point of view, and especially for the Wrecking Out. I don't come from a horror world. I don't know any of this stuff. Yeah. I have now, of course. I've been converted, but back then, no. And then totally. Yeah, so it was really good. It was just two very different ends, wasn't it? It was like I was saying one thing very different to you. It was great contrast.
And bring things. It was Charlotte's idea of like saying, well, what if there are no witches in the movie? Like,
because actually you'd written quite a bit at that point. I think we were like not halfway through, but quite a lot way through. And you're like, but I just can't.
It was going down that road, and I wasn't really into it.
Yeah.
And then you said, well, what if there are no witches? And then it kind of progressed from there of like, okay, well, let's go down that road, but then maybe let's just leave some things a little bit ambiguous so people can make up their own minds.
Yeah. Doesn't have to be. Carrie's already been made, right? No. Yeah. So we didn't want to go down that route. And then, you know, I think it's more, just as much as it's a horror film, it is a drama and a historic piece. You know, it's pretty accurate.
The sickness hangs over the city like putrid fog. Bodies are piled high in the narrow streets. It's as if the day of judgment has finally arrived.
I mean, you say it's a historic piece. I don't know if this was intentional, but I mean, it's got this medieval feel to it. But at the same time, it feels very much like a Wild West, a Western movie. At the same time, was that very much your intention to bring some kind of Wild West moments in there?
Certainly, the first act. Before she's arrested and kind of spends the rest of the film in dungeons and things, but the first act is very much like Once Upon a Time in the West.
Yeah,
meets Find a General of we originally conceived it as something we were going to shoot in the UK, and I think it was going to be shot around wintertime. So I was expecting it to be bleak and rainy and, you know, typical, you know, grimy old Britain. Yeah. But we ended up shooting it in the summer of 2019 in Hungary. Which is very, very hot and sunny during the summer. And so myself and the DP and everybody were like, how are we going to do this? And that's when I thought, well, hang on a minute. We've got people on horses with big hats, and they all carry guns, and we've got the farmsteader going into town, and we've got the corrupt sort of sheriff of the town. It's like, this is a Western. This is a Western. So let's, instead of trying to like make it something it isn't, or try and fake the grunginess of Britain or whatever. There was historically there was a heat wave in the summer of 1665, so we thought, okay, let's play to that. Let's make it dusty and hot and just play it 100% as a Western.
But you definitely got your big rainy opening. That I'm glad you did.
We got the rain in the opening, absolutely. I think I was like, I fought for that, to have the raining in the burial scene, but And even like when we designed the costumes for when Grace rides into town, that we gave her this awesome big hat and like a flowing sort of dust jacket like they're wearing, things like Once Upon a Time in the West. So I really embraced that dusty Western vibe for it.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, Sean Pertwee's coif and his hat is just fantastic. Did he get to choose that, or did you say this is the costume? Or did he get to did he have a say in it?
We designed that hat especially for him. I came up with this design for the most magnificent, epic hat, and he loved it. And so we created that for him. I assume he still has it.
Oh, he's kept it
in his collection.
So obviously, something else that was, I mean, those costumes, I imagine they just kind of came out of your imagination. They weren't specifically from that time or anything that you studied, no? But what I saw was the kind of the torture instruments were actually things that people used. I mean, the pear, for example, and things like that were all things that were actually used.
They'll try to break you, like they did to the rest of us.
Fear not, my child. Salvation is at hand.
One of the biggest problems we had was, because we wanted to keep it authentic. We wanted the tortures to be real, but trying to find tortures that they had at the time that weren't lethal, because most of the tortures that they invented for trying witches ended up with the witch dead, basically. Yeah. Be it ducking stools or some of the other things that they had, these like benches that they put somebody on that were basically just a big spike, and they'd sit somebody on top of it and slowly be cut in half, and just like horrendous stuff, really, really horrendous stuff. And but we needed our character to survive these things. So we picked the two main ones that had this thing, witch pricking, which was what they did, was just have this little spike and literally just like stab this person like 100 times. Not lethal, but bloody painful, and you lose a lot of blood. And then, of course, the Pair of Anguish, which I believe there's a real one in the Tower of London somewhere, but I mean, it is a real thing.
Oh yeah, I was looking it up before, and it looks horrendous after watching the film.
Twisted individual came up with that one, and we thought, okay, well, it's horrific, but it's real, so
But you didn't want to make it. We've got really three significant scenes: the whipping, the Pair of Anguish, and the pricking. We didn't want it to indulge on it too much. You didn't want it to make, you said many times you didn't want to make a torture movie.
No.
No,
I'm not interested in that whole like kind of torture porn subgenre. I'm not interested in watching it. I'm certainly not interested in making it. Yeah. So it was really important that we suggested what was going to happen in the torture scenes, but didn't show it or didn't dwell on it. It was like that was more than enough just to have it described or implied, and then just leave it at that. The audience gets it.
Yeah. Talking of suggestive thing, I don't know if I was reading between the lines too much or not, but I felt there was also kind of you touched on kind of nature versus nurture in some of the film. Was that something that you were getting at in the film at all, in terms of the witchcraft and the mother?
Well, she is into sort of herbal medicines and things like that, getting the herbs out for her husband and stuff like that. So I guess she is a sort of child of nature of sorts. But these are the kind of people who were accused of being witches, anybody who did something different. And that she's kind of brought into the city and not the industry, but, the city and the buildings and the society or whatever. So like she's out of her depth there a little bit, because her safe place throughout the tortures is like she keeps on snapping into the safe place, which is her in this beautiful field amongst nature. So I guess it's an undercurrent there for sure.
Just to finish off then, I mean, I'm sure everyone's been hounding you, pun intended, about this Dog Soldiers sequel that was supposed to happen ages ago, no? I think in February in interviews you said that there's a possibility that it might happen.
It's kind of fascinating that everybody's so keen on the idea.
Well, I'd love to see
20 years later, people want to see this thing, and people have been asking for the past 20 years. It's just that for the first time in 20 years that it seems like a realistic possibility. And I don't want to give away too much, but I'm kind of excited by the chance as well to finally make it happen. So we'll see. But I mean, it's not going to happen imminently. It would happen like maybe next year if it happens. So fingers crossed, touch wood, we'll see.
They took the bait.
Really, well, thanks so much for your time. I wish you the best of luck with the film when it comes out, and I hope to speak to you sometime in the future.
Thank you.
All right, thanks very much, guys.